So picture this. It's 2014, and a single server sitting in St. Petersburg. Russia is just quietly draining $20 million from casinos all over the world.
Right.
And there are no guns, there's no explosives, there's absolutely zero, like, digital hacking into a supercomputer from some dark basement.
Yeah, none of that.
It's literally just an iPhone, a few lines of really clever math, and a guy sitting thousands of miles away turning the world's most sophisticated casinos into his own personal ATMs.
It's wild. It really is.
It's so crazy. And welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we are doing a deep dive into this incredible true story. The story of this Russian math genius who essentially hacked physical reality.
Yeah, which is just a fascinating way to put it because, this whole thing, it really strips away the Hollywood glamour of a heist.
Right, yeah. It's not Ocean's 11.
Exactly. It replaces all that flash with this fundamental computer science. We're looking at a masterclass in exploiting the physical limits of what we actually call randomness in the digital age.
Yeah, our mission today is to really tear down the mechanics of this operation. We're going to deconstruct this myth of casino randomness, and we're going to debate where the line actually gets drawn between an illegal criminal hack and just, being smarter than a totally flawed system.
Right. Because this isn't really a story about gambling at all. It's an exploration of determinism and latency and just the sheer vulnerability of predictable math.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Let's look at where the cracks in this system first started to show. We're zooming in on Lumiere Place Casino in St. Louis, Missouri.
Right in the heart of it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've ever walked onto a casino floor, it's this highly engineered psychological landscape.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got the rows of shiny machines, the blinking lights, people pulling levers, pressing buttons, the specific acoustic frequencies of the chimes ringing.
All designed to keep you there.
Exactly. It's all built to immerse you in this promise of pure, unadulterated luck. The casino's entire business model, this multi-billion-dollar industry, it rests entirely on you believing that every single button press is just an isolated, chaotic event governed by total chance.
Right. That the house always wins because luck is just, luck.
But here's the dirty little secret that they really don't want you to know. Slot machines are not actually random.
No, they're not. They really can't be.
They literally can't be.
Right. So the machines on that floor in St. Louis and basically everywhere else, they rely on something called a pseudorandom number generator, or PRNG.
A PRNG. Okay, let's unpack this for a second because this is the crux of the whole thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's vital to understand that a PRNG is not some magical chaos engine. It is just a highly complex, completely deterministic algorithm.
Meaning it follows rules.
Exactly. It follows strict mathematical rules. It takes a starting number, which we call a seed, and it runs it through this series of mathematical operations to spit out a new number. And that new number dictates exactly where the reels on the slot machine are going to stop.
Okay.
And then it uses that output as the new seed for the next calculation. And it just cycles through millions of these numbers a second.
Wow. Millions a second.
Right. So to you and me, standing there on the floor, the symbols land where they land and it looks completely random.
Sure.
But to a mathematician, that sequence isn't random at all. It's a pattern. It's a fixed, repeating topographical map of data.
Okay, wait. I gotta push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because I understand the theory that computers are logical machines and they struggle with true chaos. But, we're talking about multi-billion-dollar corporations here.
We are.
They are heavily regulated. Gaming commissions test these chips specifically to make sure they can't be timed or exploited, right? So how could an industry with that much capital leave a vulnerability that obvious? Like, why don't they just use the same secure random number generators that my bank uses?
Well, it really boils down to historical hardware limitations and, honestly, just a cost-benefit analysis.
Oh, of course. Money?
Always. You see, to get true randomness, you have to measure a fundamentally unpredictable physical process.
Like, what does that even mean?
Like measuring the decay of a radioactive isotope, or measuring atmospheric static noise.
Okay, wow.
Right, and you obviously can't put a radioactive isotope or a highly sensitive atmospheric antenna into 50,000 different slot machines across the country.
Yeah, that would probably be a logistical nightmare.
A bit of one, yeah. So the industry settled for algorithms. And for a long time, the hardware running these games was, it was relatively rudimentary. The older circuit boards just didn't have the processing power to run the highly complex, cryptographically secure PRNGs that we use in modern banking. They use simpler algorithms.
The algorithms that were just good enough.
Exactly. Good enough to satisfy a gaming commission's payout requirements over, say, 1,000,000 spins. So statistically, it looks random to the regulators.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely not cryptographically secure against someone who can observe the outputs and reverse engineer the underlying math.
Okay. Which means if you can figure out that underlying formula, you can map the entire cycle of the machine.
Precisely. If it has a pattern, it can be predicted.
And that brings us to St. Petersburg and to this mastermind, Alexei.
Right.
Now, we're not talking about like a desperate slot room grinder who's just looking for a lucky streak here.
No, not at all.
Alexei and his crew, they were a highly sophisticated syndicate working for a Russian organization, and they treated the casino floor like a very precise engineering problem.
Yeah, they approached it like scientists.
They did. And they didn't just walk in and target every machine on the floor. They were very specific. They isolated older models of slot machines, specifically this one brand called Aristocrat.
Yeah, the aristocrat cabinets.
Right. So they actually bought these physical cabinets, shipped them over to a lab in Russia, and started literally ripping them apart.
Which is the most crucial part of this whole blueprint. Extracting the code from the physical hardware is step one.
Okay.
By pulling those older aristocrat boards apart, Alexei's team didn't just see the outputs of the game. They actually extracted the exact mathematical formula that dictated the spins.
Wow.
They acquired the fundamental blueprint of the machine's reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, though, because it's not like stealing a password, right? It's more like, think about it like stealing the opposing team's playbook right before the Super Bowl.
Well, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like, you don't have to go out on the field and break the quarterback's legs. You don't have to hack the scoreboard. You just have to know exactly what play they are going to run next. Or, to put it another way, it's like looking at this massive, complex combination lock, but the dials are spinning so fast they're just a blur.
Yes.
Taking the machine apart in Russia didn't just give them the final combination. It gave them the exact gear ratio of the internal mechanism. So they mapped out the physical properties of how that lock turns.
Exactly.
Which means if they could just see a few numbers pass by, they could calculate exactly when to jam a screwdriver into the gears to make it stop right on the jackpot.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. What's fascinating here is that the PRNG sequence is basically this multi-dimensional array of data. And having the source code from the reverse engineering gives you the map of that entire array.
Right.
But having a map of a city doesn't tell you where you are currently standing in that city.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. To win the money,
Yeah.
they still needed to pinpoint the machine's exact current coordinate within that massive sequence of millions of numbers. And they had to do it in real time, on a live casino floor, thousands of miles away from their labs.
Okay, so that introduces a massive, massive friction point.
Yeet.
Because reconstructing the math in a controlled lab in Russia is one thing, but executing it on a loud, crowded casino floor in Missouri, that changes this from a math problem into, like, a physics problem.
It really does. It becomes a logistics and latency nightmare.
How do you bridge a gap of thousands of miles, capture the machine's state, run this insane calculation, and execute a physical button press before the machine's internal clock cycles to the next seed? It cycles millions of times a second.
And this is the most astounding element of the entire operation.
Yeah.
The latency management here is just breathtaking. The execution relied on this meticulously orchestrated four-step method.
Okay, walk us through it. Let's break down the actual heist.
Sure. So step one, an operative walks onto the floor in St. Louis and sits down at the targeted aristocrat machine. They casually hold their iPhone, maybe pretending to rest their hand on the console, but the camera lens is perfectly framed on the spinning reels.
Sneaky, but simple.
Right. Step two, they are not recording a video to the phone's local storage to look at later. They are streaming a live feed of those reels over a cellular network or the casino Wi-Fi all the way across the Atlantic Ocean directly to Alexei's central server in St. Petersburg.
Wait, I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
I can barely hold a FaceTime call with my mom across town without getting dropped frames or audio lag.
Exactly.
The internet is inherently unstable. You've got packet loss, you've got jitter, variable routing. How could they possibly rely on a live video stream from 2014 casino Wi-Fi to time an algorithm that cycles in fractions of a second?
It's a brilliant question. And the answer is they had to build software that explicitly accounted for that exact instability.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Step three. The server in Russia isn't just watching a video. It is parsing visual data. It's likely dealing with the rolling shutter effects of an iPhone camera, trying to sync up with the refresh rate of an older slot machine screen.
That is insane.
It's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
The software analyzes the specific symbols on the reels as they stop, and seeing just 2 or 3 consecutive spins gives that Russian supercomputer enough output data to triangulate the machine's exact coordinate on that PRNG map we were just talking about.
Okay, so it finds where they are in the city, to use your analogy.
Exactly. And once it has that coordinate, it knows the entire future trajectory of the machine. It knows exactly when the winning seed is coming.
Okay, so the supercomputer sees the spins, triangulates the position, knows the future. But we still have step 4. It has to send a signal back to the operative.
Right.
So it sends a ping to the iPhone, which creates this custom haptic vibration, a physical buzz that tells the player, press the button now. But think about the precision here.
It's microscopic.
Right. The player's finger doesn't move at the speed of light. Human reaction time is roughly, what, a quarter of a second?
Yeah, about 250 milliseconds on average.
Right. So if that machine is cycling through thousands and thousands of numbers a second, if the player waits to feel the buzz and then presses the button, the winning seed is long gone. It relies entirely on human reaction time syncing perfectly with the supercomputer. How did they not miss the window every single time?
Because the predictive algorithm compensated for human biology.
No way.
Yes. The Russian server calculated the exact network latency, the time it would take for the data packet to cross the ocean. And then it added the average 250 millisecond delay for human neuromuscular response.
That is wow.
It's brilliant. It sent the ping ahead of time. The server essentially fired a bullet into the future, timing it so perfectly that the operative's finger depressed the physical button on the casino console at the exact millisecond. The internal PRNG cycled onto the jackpot seed.
So the operative on the floor didn't need to know any math at all.
Not a single shred of it. They were simply a biological actuator, just a flesh and blood extension of that server in St. Petersburg.
A remote-controlled human. That is such an unbelievable synthesis of network engineering and human physiology.
It really is.
And it worked. I mean, they were just draining these machines. But, you can only pull off guaranteed wins so many times before the house starts to notice they're losing their edge.
Absolutely.
A system that perfect basically creates its own downfall. Because casinos, they don't just rely on the math of the machines. They rely heavily on the math of their accounting.
Exactly. The coin in versus coin out ratio.
Right. If a machine is programmed to keep, say, 10% of all the money put into it, and suddenly it's paying out consistently day after day, that breaks the fundamental logic of the casino floor.
And that deviation in the data is what ultimately exposed them. For years, the casinos were completely blind. They just thought these guys were the luckiest gamblers on planet Earth.
Just having a great run.
Yeah, but eventually, math catches up with greed. The casino's back-end software constantly monitors every cabinet on the floor. And when security teams in Missouri and Macau and across Eastern Europe started seeing these massive, statistically impossible deviations on these older aristocrat cabinets, the red lights started flashing everywhere.
But the crazy thing is, the machines themselves weren't reporting any tampering.
None. There were no physical breaches of the hardware.
Right.
There was no digital malware detected on the network. The hardware was functioning exactly as it was programmed to function.
So the security teams are sitting there scratching their heads. The machine isn't broken. So what do? You look at the human operating the machine.
You go to the surveillance tapes.
You pull the tapes. And this is where they found the smoking gun. And I love this part because the tapes revealed this massive vulnerability in Alexei's master plan. It wasn't a flaw in his brilliant math. It wasn't a flaw in the transatlantic latency management. It was a complete failure to understand basic human psychology.
It was a dead giveaway.
Right, because gamblers are addicted to watching the reels spin.
Yes, exactly.
This is such a classic human error. They figured out the most complex math in the world, but they forgot to just act like gamblers.
Yeah, slot machines are designed by audio engineers and psychologists to be totally mesmerizing. When a normal player hits that spin button, their eyes track the reels, they lean in, they anticipate the outcome.
They celebrate.
Right. But Alexei's crew, they didn't care about the game because they already knew the outcome.
Yeah, you watch these tapes, and these operatives have their eyes just glued to their laps, or they're staring blankly at their phones, and they've got this one hand hovering so stiffly over the spin button, just waiting for the tactile feedback, a split-second finger tap right before a win.
They completely ignored the spectacle of the game. They lacked all the normal physiological markers of gambling.
If they had just faked a little excitement, if they had just looked at the screen and cheered a bit, they might have gotten away with it forever.
They really might have. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a brilliant irony. Alexei used high-level predictive data analysis to defeat the casino's machines. But the casinos use behavioral data analysis to defeat Alexei's operatives.
Wow. Yeah, data versus data.
Exactly. The hunters had suddenly become the hunted. The casinos identified these unnatural physical movements, flagged the individuals, and the authorities finally stepped in. The FBI and international law enforcement systematically dismantled the whole network, a network that had, by conservative estimates, successfully extracted $20 million from the industry worldwide.
$20 million. Which brings us to the ultimate kind of deeply uncomfortable question of this whole deep dive.
The gray area.
The gray area. Because when the police and the authorities shut this down, they labeled Alexei the mastermind of an international syndicate. They called him a criminal. But look at the mechanics we just walked through.
Right.
He didn't break a firewall. He didn't alter a single line of code in those machines.
No, he didn't.
He didn't inject a virus. All he did was use math to observe a publicly displayed pattern, calculate the sequence that the casino voluntarily put right in front of him, and he timed his button presses perfectly. So, what does this all mean? Was this actually a heist or just a lawful exploitation of flaws the casino industry brought upon themselves?
It really forces us to define what actually constitutes a hack in a system built on deterministic rules.
Right.
If you view this strictly through the lens of logic, the machine was operating entirely within its intended parameters. It generated numbers exactly the way it was programmed to generate them. The casino presented a game to the public, and Alexei simply played it with perfect mathematical efficiency.
Okay, think about it like counting cards in blackjack.
For example.
If I sit at a table and I just use my brain to track the ratio of high cards to low cards remaining in the dealer's shoe, I am not cheating. I haven't marked the cards. I haven't bribed the dealer. I'm just reading the data presented to me to shrink the house edge. In casinos, they will back you off a table for counting cards. They will ban you from the property. But they can't throw you in prison for it because just using your brain isn't strictly illegal. Isn't this exploit just the digital silicon equivalent of counting cards?
The parallel is incredibly striking, and I think it exposes the massive information asymmetry that the gaming industry really relies upon.
Say more about that.
Well, the casino possesses all the mathematical information. They know the exact return-to-player percentages. They sell the public this illusion of chaos and luck, while quietly relying on cold, hard determinism to guarantee their quarterly profits.
Right. The house always wins because the math says so.
Exactly. But the moment an individual leverages that exact same deterministic reality against the house to balance the scales, the industry immediately calls the FBI to protect its margins.
It's totally hypocritical.
It's an incredible study in hypocrisy.
Yeah.
They're perfectly content when an algorithm quietly drains the public's money based on math. But when someone else's algorithm drains theirs, suddenly it's prosecuted as an international syndicate.
It really reframes the entire concept of a rigged game. And, as we wrap this up, I want listeners to think about how this extends far beyond a casino floor in Missouri.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we just spent this time breaking down how a multi-billion-dollar industry lost $20 million because computer-generated randomness is just a predictable pattern. But slot machines are not the only systems that rely on pseudo-random number generators.
Far from it.
Think about your own digital footprint right now. Think about the two-factor authentication app on your phone generating a new 6-digit code every 30 seconds. Or think about the encryption securing your online banking, or the password managers protecting your email.
It's all built on the same foundational logic.
Exactly. If a guy sitting in Russia can use an iPhone camera and a server to reverse engineer the math of a slot machine and predict the exact millisecond of a winning seed, what does that mean for the deterministic random number generators currently protecting the most sensitive data in our digital lives right now?
It's a sobering thought, because the vulnerability of deterministic systems is universal. If the underlying mechanism isn't truly physically chaotic, like we talked about with radioactive isotopes, it's fundamentally just a pattern. And a pattern is always waiting to be decoded by someone with enough computing power and enough patience.
Yeah. Definitely something to keep in the back of your mind the next time a little green padlock icon tells you your connection is completely secure.
For sure.
Well, what an incredible journey into the darker, smarter side of human ingenuity. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Which side of the debate do you fall on? Was Alexei a mastermind criminal pulling off a high-tech heist? Or just a brilliant opportunist lawfully beating casinos at their own game? Drop your thoughts in the comments or shoot us a message. And if you loved this deep dive, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button, share it with a friend, and I'll catch you in the next story. Stay curious.